from. Tell your girl she can kick it if she wants some, but we got no time to waste.
Welcome to 4AZ. I'm your host, Tyler McDowell Blanken. In this special 4-part series, we welcome back Sarah Beth and Mike Steph to relive our favorite school-related films. That's right, the debut of our winter film series is here. Now, we'll discuss what each film accurately portrays about education, what it doesn't, and other memories we have about the movie. Mike Steph, Sarah Beth, happy holidays. Dare I say happy New Year? How you both been?
Good.
Ladies
Nothing
first.
exciting. Just, holidays, being on break is really nice. So getting caught up on some like crochet projects and stuff. So I've been good. Nothing, spend time with my family. Yes.
I love that.
Good with one hook, not two.
Shout out to our YouTube viewers. Mike Steph, the active listener that he is. Mike, how you been? Happy holidays. Happy New Year.
Happy holidays to you. Happy holidays to Sarah. Happy holidays to everyone out there. Can't really complain. I'm not. What the one thing I will say, and maybe this is just a me thing, but I've been hearing this from a lot of people this year that the holidays just haven't felt like the holidays. Christmas just didn't feel like Christmas. By the time this comes out, it'll be New Year's Eve. Does it really feel like it's about to be 2026? So that I've been battling with, but at the end of the day, my family has their health, family friends have their health. Consider myself and others blessed. So I really can't complain.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you both for joining me. Also, thank you to my pops. I've been saving this moment until we were on air. He gifted me, Pop/Santa, gifted me this Gregory Eddie Funko Pop figure. So we made it. We have some Abbott in the background here. Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Santa. Love you all. Love you too as well. Thank you.
Wow.
Yes, I'm very blessed.
Wait,
He's got the tie and he's got it rolled up. I don't know if that's poster board or anyway. It's phenomenal.
It's just so thoughtful. I love a thoughtful gift.
I'm so blessed, Sarah Beth.
That is
blessed to know you too as well. Well, all right. I say we get to it for this 4-part series. We have a plan. We have many plans, actually. For this episode, we're going to be discussing Mike's pick of 1981's Bustin Loose. Tomorrow, we'll be discussing Sarah Beth's pick of 1983's The Outsiders. On Friday, my pick will be reviewing 1988's School Days. And then finally on Saturday, yes, we will have a Saturday drop for the podcast. It will be our special exit ticket episode in which we play an inaugural game of buy, rent, or pass, discussing Bring It On from the year 2000, Mean Girls 2004, and finally Superbad, the iconic 2007 comedy. We'll also give a shout out to some other films during said exit ticket. But before we get there, it's day one of our film series. Mike Steph, before I kick it to you, here is the plot description from 1981's Bustin Loose. It is a film about ex-con Joe Braxton, who is given a chance to redeem himself by driving a group of children on a cross-country road trip. Now, after violating his parole, he is assigned a unique mission by his parole officer named Donald. The journey goes on to reveal Joe's growth and his newfound compassion, so on and so forth. Mike, Sarah, these conversations are going to revolve around 3 questions. What the film gets right about school, once again, what it gets wrong or embellishes, and then finally, would this film be made today in our year 2025, now 2026? Mike Steph, you picked Bustin Loose starring Richard Pryor. Tell us your thoughts on this film. And again, we'll start with, in your opinion, what does it get right about the school or education experience?
Well, my thoughts on this film. This is one of the films that are from my childhood, hence 1981. I remember watching this film first when they used to have late night movies on network television. So it was like a Saturday late night movie, and I came on Channel 4, and that's where I first saw it. And I was instantly gravitated to it just for the action between Richard Pryor, Cicely, Tyson, and the kids, because they had kids of all nationalities, all ethnicities, different backgrounds. The kids were from orphanage, well, yeah, group home, and the group home actually closed. And there was 8 remaining kids, but these 8 remaining kids were in the special education program, so to speak. So they had emotional, physical um, problems that I guess nobody wanted to take. So these are kind of like the outcasts. So you had a boy that was blind. You had a girl from Vietnam that was actually participated in, well, sold into um, prostitution. Um, you had a pyromaniac, which to a certain degree, kind of, I don't know in the past, not to go on a tangent, because I just have to. When I was in, matter of fact, I'll wait until finish. So yeah, all these different type of children, and Cicely Tyson, her character was one of a caregiver, and she decided to take the children from Philadelphia, the origin, to her family's ranch out in the state of Washington, right outside of Seattle, what have you. The part of me that actually I just caught today, because I just literally rewatched it today prior to the recording, is when she said that when she was asked by her parole officer boyfriend, um, how can you can't take these kids? She said, yes, I can. Why? Well, nobody's going to miss them. This is the landscape that we're dealing with in the early 80s, that 8 kids, because of their backgrounds, because of their situation, nobody wanted, nor nobody would care if they were gone. So she took it upon herself to try to give these kids a new lease on life, even though, if you really think about it, technically, that was kind of illegal. But the whole movie was pretty much the hijinks of their cross country trek from Philly to Washington. You had Joe Braxton, played by Richard Pryor. He was an ex convict, and he was kind of cajoled into being the bus driver for the trip, because he was, by his parole officers, like, listen, either you're going to do this, you're going to take my girlfriend, you're going to take my woman's kids all across the country, or I'm going to violate your parole and you're going to go to jail. So with the options, Joe Braxton said, yeah, I'll do that. Now there was a couple instances in the film where Joe Braxton's cold, hardened convict heart, so to speak, kind of got broken down by the kids. There was one situation where the Vietnamese girl um, I wouldn't say had a crush for Joe, but she was used to older men taking advantage of her. So she drew a picture of the bus, because this bus was broken down. Like, I'm surprised it even got out of the city of Philly. But she made a picture of the bus and gave it to Joe. And Joe was like, thank you. And she thought that, she asked him, like, do you like it? Do you like me? And she correlated somebody saying they liked her with wanting to sleep with her. And Joe, in his way, kind of put her in a place, in a not in a disrespectful way, but just like in a way of saying, listen, you have so much to offer. All the things that you thought were normal are not normal. It shouldn't be normalized. You're a child. I'm an adult. All because somebody likes you doesn't you shouldn't expect to actually go the full 9 yards, because it's a sick thing that you've been through, and I'm not going to be the type of person to take advantage of you. Then there was another child, I think Spanish child, that for some reason just got attached to Joe and went to go fishing. So from the first time he saw her, he's like, yeah, Joe gonna take me fishing. And Joe's like, I'm not taking you fishing. Yeah, Joe gonna take me fishing. So finally they're driving and they come across the lake, and he was like, yeah, Joe gonna take me fishing. Mr. Braxton's gonna take me fishing. And Joe was like, no. And then Vivian, Miss Perry, played by Cicely Tyson, came up, and she was like, you taking him fishing? No, I'm not taking him fishing. Then he kind of realized, like, darn, he really wants to go. It's right there. I'm with these children. they don't have the opportunity to do these things, so I'm going to do so. So he made a makeshift fishing rod, and they caught a fish, and everybody was happy. There was another child that was blind that for some reason had a fixation on trying to drive. So there was a time that he, took the bus over and drove into a ditch or what have you. But that's because he didn't want to go back to Philly because the parole officer caught up with the bus and was about to tell them, well, wanted them to go back to Philly. And he was afraid. He didn't want to go back. And he's like, listen, I'm going back to the city. Nobody wants me. I'm going to be in a group home. I'm just going to pretty much right away. So he was trying to really make his getaway, despite his disability of being blind, So there was, like I said, there was a lot of touching moments, especially at the end where they finally get to the destination, they get to the farm, and Miss Perry wasn't able to get the funding that she needed to keep the land. And Joe Braxton comes up with he sees a quote unquote pyramid scheme that was called a trapezoid scheme. And he was very familiar with that. So he figured, like, listen, they're scamming the people. I'm familiar with the scam, and I'll actually help them scam the people. But meanwhile, I'll actually take the $15,000 that I collected so I can for the kids. And there's a big back and forth between the perpetrators and Joe, and Miss Perry was involved and everything. And the mayor, who actually, it's funny, he's the mayor and he controls the banks in that city, which is kind of suspect. He went to the house, went to the farm, and the kids came up with these wild stories about how they hitchhiked in the snow for 300 miles and so forth. Really laid it on thick, and the mayor decided to allow them to get the funding for the kids to stay there. So that's really like the Crib Notes version. It was so many other segments that I could talk about, but we're gonna try to truncate this. It's one of my favorite films ever. There's a theme song at the end by the late Roberta Flack called the Children's Song. It took me until maybe like 2 years ago to actually really track down this song. But yeah, it's one of those songs that it's one of those films that remind me of my childhood, and just a real great movie, and I really advise everybody to have a chance to see it. Now, when it comes to the questions at hand, what did they get right about school? Well, back in the 80s, I would say it wasn't really school based, but in the 80s there was a stigma with children. I mean, to a certain degree it is now, but especially back in the 80s and 90s, there was a stigma with children that had problems. Well, matter of fact, not problem, issues. Whether it's physical, emotional, mental, what have you. So by them being left to their own devices, and for Miss Perry to be the one that says, you know what, I'm not going to have them swallowed up by the system or lost in the system. I'm going to at least try to give them a new lease on life. Yeah, that's pretty accurate back in the 80s, because we had quote unquote special education classes in school that they were literally isolated from the rest of the school, from the rest of the grades. They had gym by themselves. They had a lunch by themselves. Like, there was no integration between the two. So now you have what they call, you have better services for children with certain issues. I think, I don't know if I might be misspeaking, but with IEPs of varying degrees, what have you, you have better support systems for that. Back in the 80s, it was like, listen, to a lack of a better term, it's like almost like putting them in a rubber room. Like, all right, we're just gonna put them there. They do their 8 hours a day, and we just pass them off. Like, I know in my experience, I think in 8th grade they had what they called, I don't know what the meaning. It might have been an acronym, but it was called a Gates class. And those were for quote unquote special education. And you had kids in 8th grade that was like 16, 17 in the class, and I guess because I was in one of the quote unquote top classes, they thought that, well, they can integrate them with us. And as much as you would think we'd be, scared about it, because it's like, darn, they're gonna bully us and everything. Actually, some of some of the people in there actually became very good allies of mine going forward. Based on the fact of we didn't treat them any type of way. We played with them. It was like, all right, yeah, we just sharing this gym with another class. It wasn't like, oh, we're dealing with the Gates people. So I think that's kind of right about school back in that era. Now, what it gets wrong and embellishes, once again, to my recollection, didn't really embellish much. I mean, you had your Hollywood tricks of, okay, how come the parole officer was able to catch up with them quick, even though they had how many days in advance, head start, but yet he was right on their tail every step of the way. Yeah, but that's Hollywood for you. It was kind of I wouldn't say a romantic comedy, but it was kind of cliche in the fact that Joe Braxton and Miss Perry end up, opposite attract. She's upstanding, educator, and he's pretty much a scam artist, a convict. And then at the end, he tore her stuff, she tore him stuff, and then they end up kissing when he's about to go back to Philly with her, I guess now, ex-boyfriend, parole officer, and the parole officer does not come out and say anything, doesn't want to fight, doesn't say anything. He actually told Miss Perry, I love you. Donald didn't say anything. And then to make even things more embellished, he drives maybe about 50 feet, and then he lets him go. He's like, Joe, go home. Really? And Joe didn't even say, really? Yeah. No, he just got up, got his suitcase, and went back to the ground, and that's how it ended. I'm sorry. If I'm a parole officer and I done went through all this trouble for my girl and got arrested and all this time, and then he ended up taking my girl from me, a convict ends up taking my girl, and I'm going to just say, here, have her, have her and her brood of kids. Yeah, that's kind of embellishing. Now, the last one would be, could this movie be made now? Yes. Yeah, because there's not really any stereotypes, so to speak. There's not anything that would be so far over the line that you would like, absolutely not. Like the couple movies that we're going to preview in this series. Yeah, there's certain lines and you just couldn't cross. But this one, I would not want them to remake this. But something of this ilk could definitely be made today. Just the like you said, the socioeconomic part, the education part of the children part of, just being left to your own devices and being forgotten by the system, forgotten by the city, and so forth. That's going on today in a lot of ways, especially with the way our government is moving in certain ways. And I won't get into that right now, but you can read between the lines. So I definitely believe this could pass the mustard for today.
Speaking of our government, before I kick it to Sarah Beth, I have to get both of your thoughts on the KKK scene. That's all I was thinking about in preparation for this conversation. That was crazy. I just want to, as my dear mother would say, I just want to plant that seed. But Sarah Beth, thoughts on Bustin Loose?
Well, as I messaged you after I watched it, I was not expecting it to be as like heartfelt. I was not mentally prepared. So going into it, right, like again, realizing I had a little bit of face blindness and confused John Pryor and Richard Pryor. But then when I realized Richard Pryor, Blazing Saddles, like all the things, I went into it expecting and then reading the description. So I'm expecting more like The Ringer with Johnny Knoxville. So I did get a little like nervous on how we were going to portray the students, because like the 80s, it was a different time, and how things were portrayed and things that were okay then aren't as acceptable today. And I think the part that really impressed me was the way in which they treated every child like with dignity. Like the kids were never the butt of the joke. And even just, and watching like Richard Pryor, because now I want to keep saying Richard Prine. Richard Pryor, like his growth and like realizing like he's not just a convict. Like that like ending scene where when they realize they don't have the money and he tells her like, if I had $10,000, it would be yours, but I don't, but you're not going to tell me I'm nothing. And like just those moments, and like then the kids writing him the letter at the end of like absolving him and like taking him off parole, like they knew he was more than that. And like even just every kid, like you come to find out they all had these like backstories. The kid who's a pyromaniac, you know, his parents had died in a fire. The girl from I think Vietnam, right? Like that would have been during the Vietnam War. Like it was made very clear she was sold, like that wasn't her choice. She's not doing those things by her choice. That's survival. And so the way in which like they gave the kids dignity, but also there was a story behind it. And like that to me is the most relatable part about being in education, is that I've worked with some kids with some tough behaviors. They're kids that people have wanted to give up on or like just stereotyped. And then you sit down with them and you hear like what's going on at home, and you hear these things. Or like, you know, I'm very involved in the like education sector, and how, you know, when we're looking at funding cuts, the first cut is always our special education services, and not from like the district's choice, but that's the big fear right now with the Department of Education being shut down at a federal level, because most of what the Department of Ed does is make sure special education and civil rights are followed. And so if that's left to the states, then we get back into where you have, oh, well, you know, we found homes for all but these 8. What do we do? Like, and no one seemed to care. And so like, it was like, I really just enjoyed it because while it was very funny, it told the story very well. And like, it was very relatable, even though technically none of it is like takes place within the school. All those pieces were so very relatable even to today. And the KKK scene was, I will say, I think out of all of it, I think that scene would probably be the only scene they wouldn't be able to do today. Because I don't think, it's hard because it's not a funny thing, but like, especially right now, you can't joke about it, if that makes sense. Like,
You would think that with the climate that it was at the time that it was made, and you fast forward 40 some odd years, that it would be applicable to now. But once again, as we're talking the future, politically incorrectness to a certain degree, but more sensitivity to things that sometimes need to be said, but you just don't want to say it. I mean, you could. I'm trying not to, but you could correlate this to how I could see them putting that scene in an updated movie, updated version. Maybe it wouldn't be the KKK, but what you can have tiki torches. You know, you which you're going past it. You're going past the town, and just so happen, you know, you got young guys. There's a way you could do it without really just putting it in the face, you know. So yeah, but yeah, with the aesthetic of the hoods and the white, yeah. Now that could, but I wouldn't say that's passe, but it just wouldn't be applicable to right now. But there's a way you can implement it.
And I don't know that a director could play it for comedy as effectively as Bustin Loose did for that bus scene, where you're leaving the KKK in the dust and they got mud on their their garb, if you will. To Sarah Beth's point, Mike Steph, to your point, I think it's just so present in the zeitgeist right now, and we know it's there, and it's made a comeback, for lack of an effective way to phrase it here. I don't think that would stick, or that would be good in 2025, 2026. But I do think the heart of this film, Mike Steph, you laid it out with the legendary Cicely Tyson, the rom-com element that was there, for sure would be appealing to audiences near and far today. So it's a great choice by you, Mike. I was not familiar with this film whatsoever, so you once again put me on game, and this was a great way to start our winter film series. Well, please join in on our conversation. We thank you all so much for joining us. We'd love to know what you think of the film. You can drop us a comment here on YouTube or reach us across the social spaces at 4AZ Peach. We will see you tomorrow for a Sarah Beth special. We will be discussing 1983's The Outsiders. We'll see you then.